Jak and Daxter is my second favorite franchise of all time, and recently I've been going through the entire Jak series for a fresh perspective. I started playing this game as a kid, and even all those years ago, this series still has a special place in my heart. And honestly, Jak 2 has a lot to do with that. I love Jak and Daxter the Precursor Legacy, as that's what got me into the series, but Jak 2 is where this series evolved into GOAT status for me. So coming back to this game yet again, I wanted to go into how I feel about the game in its entirety all these years later.
Ding ding, third floor. Body chains, roach food, torture devices. Hey buddy, you seen any heroes around here? Whoa, what'd they do to you? Jak, it's me, Daxter. That's a fine hello. I've been crawling around in this place, risking my tail, literally, to save you. I've been looking for you for 2 years. Say something, just this once.
I'm gonna kill Praxis!
Starting off with the gameplay, if you play Jak 1, then you know how different that gameplay was in comparison to this. The first game was essentially a collect-a-thon, as all you did was collect stuff. However, in Jak 2, all of that was changed, as Naughty Dog took a hard left turn and changed the gameplay completely to make it more like Grand Theft Auto, which at the time was the hottest thing since sliced bread, so it made sense to try and capitalize on the direction the gaming industry was moving in at that time. The gamble was, how would it actually turn out? It's not exactly easy to replicate GTA, especially considering this game is more of a cartoon sort of art style. Nonetheless, when it all came together, I think this gameplay is insanely addicting. The best way I can put it would be on the same level as Resident Evil, as those games are very different, but in terms of how you can beat them very fast and efficiently if you know what you're doing, the same can be said for Jak 2. Once you know what missions are coming up and how to complete them, you can speedrun through the entire game. It really is that fun. Diving in on a micro level, the gameplay still has you playing as Jak from a third-person perspective, and all the platforming from before is still there, but it's everything in between which has been changed. Now there's missions that you go through with cutscenes before and after completion. I think the missions themselves are pretty easy to get through and understand, as I was able to beat this game many times as both a kid and an adult. Sometimes what you would have to do is a bit ambiguous, as what you had to do wasn't always explained, but with a bit of exploring you can figure out something you might not understand. However, this brings up the first issue I have with this gameplay, the checkpoints. Now, as I've already said, for me this game is very easy as I've played it a bunch of times, but for the first time player, they might struggle a lot because the checkpoints are very bad. To put it simply, if you fail a mission, there aren't any checkpoints for the majority of the missions. Once you fail the mission, you have to start from the very beginning. This makes getting through every mission a slog if you're really struggling with the game. Not having checkpoints makes this game a lot harder than it needed to be, so if you think this game is really difficult, I understand. Furthermore, I love how well the combat flowed within this game. The combination of physical attacks and weapon gameplay made everything come together so seamlessly. When the enemies, called the metalheads, pull up and try to attack you, you can do these sick punch kick combos followed by a gunshot at the end. Take that concept and apply it to all the enemies and the combat becomes too much fun. Of course, the devs did a great job at keeping everything sort of in the universe, as the guns were themed off the different ecos that we saw from before. The morph gun had 4 different types of variants: the scatter gun, blaster, Vulcan Fury, and Peacemaker. Each variation had a different color which represented a different function. You unlock these gradually as you progress through the game, but what I liked is that you never were forced to use just any one of them once you had them all unlocked. The choice was always yours. Personally, I used the yellow blaster variant more than the others. It came with a bunch of ammo, and by combining it with these jumping, spinning kick attacks, you were able to shoot so many enemies in all directions. It's kinda broken. Using the weapons against the enemies did require some thought, as the enemy variety was done well since there was a slew of metalheads that could appear on any given mission. Not every gun was the best choice to use against every type of metalhead. Sometimes they were larger in size or faster in speed, so you had to adjust your strategy so your gun would match the type of enemy you were facing. Combine this with the existing melee combat, and this entire system evolved perfectly. And I haven't even mentioned the couple boss fights that are in the game. In my opinion, the game can be broken up into thirds, as there's a major boss fight after each third of the game. Each of these boss fights are really fun and require you to use your guns in order to deal damage. I thought the designs of these fights were well done, as they didn't feel cheap or unfair, but instead balanced and structured. As you took down one of the life bars, the battle would move on to the next phase, which would change the boss's attacks ever so slightly. Once you got through all the phases, the fight was over. I wouldn't say any of these were hard, but I think you're not paying attention or not understanding how to kill the boss, you're gonna struggle a bit. I love these fights though. The new mechanic that was introduced in this game was the ability to use Dark Eco to give Jak dark powers. This pretty much made Jak a Super Saiyan demon creature, which was pretty cool. However, if I'm being honest, I didn't use these much. I was so good with using the guns for each mission, I didn't think think there was a big need to use the powers during combat. Of course, there are times where it's obvious that you should be using the dark attacks, but those don't happen that often. And it's not that I didn't like them, but I think that the guns are more efficient and fun to use. Still, if you collect enough metalhead gems and unlock the moves, using Dark Jack can actually be really beneficial in certain situations. One in particular that I have to mention is the mission where Brooder shows you where a piece of the Seal of Mar is located. Once you grab it, you have to escape by getting through endless waves of Crimson Guards, which are the police. This is one of the hardest missions in the game as a kid. However, once I discovered a trick, this made the mission a breeze. If you have a full Dark Jack charge before starting the mission, once the cutscene ends, you turn into Dark Jack, jump in the water, and kill the robot. And by doing that, you're able to get on your jetboard and ride over the water and ride out the mission. It might take a bit of practice, but it's such a cool way to get past this mission. Dark Jack has its usefulness, it's just not what I gravitated towards when I played this game. Now, when not going through the missions, the real treat was just riding around Haven City. Just like the first game, there was a bunch of different areas for you to explore, but in Jak 2, Haven City was easily the highlight. And to make things better, you were able to fly cars all over the city as well. As you progress, you unlock different areas of the city that were previously inaccessible, and then you're able to take on missions in those places as well. There's nothing like completing a mission and then riding around listening to that Haven City theme. It's just so comfy. But again, this brings up another issue with this game, the lack of a fast travel system. Even though I liked riding from place to place, there is no way to fast travel from one area to the next within the city. Now, before you get mad, I do know that there is a ship that you can take to some places outside the city and a rift ring that can transport you to certain areas, but it's only to these specific areas. You can't use these methods of transportation to instantly send you anywhere across the city. That's the problem. So if you're in the city and have to go from Torrance hideout all the way to the garage, you have to fly all the way there. There's no way getting around it. I love this game, but if you're a first time player, then you really might hate this aspect of it. It does slow things down in between missions and make things a bit more tedious, but I personally really enjoy the downtime. I liked flying around the city, running over people, and messing up their cars before grabbing others. However, the lack of a fast travel system is a problem, and it's interesting the team didn't decide to input one during development. Now, I did mention that there were various locations that these missions took place in, and that is still true. I thought this game did a great job at having you do each of these missions in areas that were vastly different from each other. One mission could have you inside of a factory, while another could have you in the outskirts of town. Regardless of where you were, all these missions and locations are memorable for varying reasons. It could be because of the missions you did while you were there, or the annoying enemies that were dispersed throughout. Either way, you're bound to remember at least one of them. One of my favorite areas was the Tomb of Mar, which is definitely one of the cooler places in the game. Here you have to go through 2 trials before finishing it off with a boss fight. This happens more than halfway through the game, and it's one of the most memorable areas. The trials you do are simple, but they consist of things that are different than the majority of the other missions throughout the game. And on top of that, you get to play as Daxter. Unlike Jak 1, where you only play with Jak, Daxter does have playable sections in this game. If you have played Daxter, which released on the PSP after this title, then you know exactly how he plays. It's pretty basic, as you only have a couple of moves, but being able to play as him nonetheless was just a bonus for the gameplay. I'm glad we started playing with him in this title, because I'm sure that question would have been brought up eventually if that wasn't the case. The locations of all these missions just help to make this game feel more unique and different from the first in every way possible. In regards to the gameplay, Jak 2 is an absolute blast. It's so simple to pick up and understand, yet it's built upon the foundation that was started in Jak 1 and serves as a nice evolution of what was created before. There are some minor issues, but I think those are more due to the time of when this game was initially developed. So for a series trying to recreate the style of gameplay that GTA had, I think Naughty Dog pretty much nailed it. As far as the story goes, this was a lot better than I thought it was gonna be. If you played Jak 1 and got the secret cutscene for 100%ing the game, then Jak 2 picks up right after that. You start out with the ring that you found at the end of 1 and use that to teleport into the future, where you end up getting dark powers and are separated from your friends. From here is where the story picks up as you seek revenge for what you've been through, all while trying to reunite with everyone from before. But of course, it's never that simple. As you try to accomplish that goal, things get messy and you discover a lot more about Haven City and everything in it. The true villain is revealed and you'll see how everything is all connected, considering time travel is an important aspect of this story. Usually when time travel is involved with games, it's done pretty bad, but I think it was done well in this one. At times, this game gets a bit confusing, but if you put the pieces together, you'll always have a sense of what's going on. I think the pacing of this game was solid, as everything starts slow, and then as you complete each act, things start ramping up all the way until the conclusion. Once you reach a certain point, all hell breaks loose and it's obvious that you're in the endgame. Playing this as a kid when the villain is revealed, I couldn't believe my eyes. Maybe because I was younger, but I thought the story did a great job at not making obvious who the villain was until it was actually shown to us. In addition, the plot did a great job at setting things up to make you believe one thing, when in actuality the other was true. Either way, this moment will always stand as one of my favorite gaming moments of all time. As you progress in the story, you meet new characters, and watching them interact really gave you a reason to get attached to any of them, whereas in Jak 1 they truly felt like NPCs. Like you completed tasks for them, but outside of Kira and Samos, why should you care? Jak 2 actually gave you incentive to try and care about these people. Seeing them react to the changing situation helped make everything more tense and add more drama to the already hectic situation. It was a nice touch. If there was any critique I would have to the story, it's that some of the scenes didn't have any meaning to the story. They were just specific to the mission that you needed to complete. This wasn't all the time, but every now and again, this would be the case. This is more of a nitpick, but since I played this so many times, I did notice it. It isn't a big deal at all though. Overall, Jak 2 is a fantastic game. For Naughty Dog to take a chance and push the series in a direction that many weren't expecting, I think they nailed it. I understand if you don't like this game because you're more of a fan of 1's gameplay style, but for me, I love this change and think this was the right move in the long term. This game isn't perfect, but for me it holds a special place and it still stands as my second favorite game ever. For those reasons, I'm going to give this game a 10. For the couple issues that I mentioned earlier, those might turn you off from this game, but trust me, you want to give this game a try. It's just fun. Even if you don't vibe with the story, this gameplay makes it a blast to go through. With this switch in gameplay, the next game in the series, Jak 3, would take this exact formula and expand upon it even further. What did you think about Jak 2? Have you played this before, or are you hearing about this for the first time? Let me know in the comment section below, and if you enjoyed this video, feel free to watch one of my other reviews right here.